Okay, are you guys ready? So it's 4:30. I'd like to call the MUD 46 Board of Directors meeting to order. We have an agenda, and the first item on the agenda is opening invocation and pledge of allegiance. So does anybody have an invocation that they'd like to offer?
I'm not up here for the invitation.
So that's the American flag. We don't have a flag.
They're in the front.
I see. Okay, in lieu of an invocation, how about a moment of silence for your own prayer? So I interpret Pledge of Allegiance to be pledged to the flag of the United States of America. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas now.
Okay, do you want to lead us in the
I'll try.
pledge?
Honor the
Flag.
I pledge
allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
To tell you the truth, since we're on an agenda item, I feel like I'm a loyal American citizen and a proud Texan. I was born in Galveston, lived my whole life in Texas, worked here, educated here. And, I feel like this pledge to the Texas flag is a distraction from the importance of the American flag. And I see here in the Woodlands that we have something like 25% turnover every year. And I think that a lot of people that leave here end up going to other states and don't ever look back to remember their heartfelt pledge to the state of Texas. So I would prefer we just do the pledge to the American flag. Any comments?
I'm not from Texas. I didn't grow up here, but I think I grew up in Maryland. I think Texas is a very unique state. I mean, if you look at the history of it, if you read this is the book, Texas, it has to me, a very unique culture. And I think a lot of people have strong feelings about the uniqueness of that culture. And I think the pledge recognizes, the uniqueness of that culture, the spirit of the state.
So George, we don't have on the agenda for today to discuss whether we want to potentially remove a particular pledge. So I think if you would like for that to be a discussion item, we can put that at the end of the agenda on for a future agenda.
I think it can be discussed. Whether we act on it today, I don't care. But okay. Number 3, any comments from the public? I see Alan here, and I don't think there's any others. Any requests for adjustment?
Have anything this month?
Was easy. Okay. And discuss in more detail.
I think the intention is to pull out 5, so we can have a discussion.
Yes.
Since I guess we're past comment, I'll just I'll make some comments about the tour that Alan and I
Well, how about, let's decide if
Oh,
we're
I'm sorry.
gonna do
Okay, I'm
the
sorry.
consent agenda,
Yeah,
what
I
we're gonna pull
apologize.
out, and then we'll go
Yeah.
bring in Alan and have comments. Do y'all have any desire for more detail on the wastewater strategic plan?
Yes.
Do you want to pull that one out?
Mhm.
Any others?
Trustee report.
So we're gonna exclude number 5, number 11, and 13. So do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda without those 3 items?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 5. Like to act on the request from Alan Hiddengren. And then hear any comments y'all have, and then we'll make a motion. David.
Okay, so, Alan and I, we walked the area, the other day. And I thought I would, kind of go over my observations in terms of the area. I used to live in French Oaks for 3 years. I used to, run that track many times. I probably have several hundred miles around that track. And, so I've observed the use of the track and its interaction with citizens. So, what I'd like to do is kind of break my comments into three categories. And the first category, I think, was Alan's original request, which was the 30-foot right of way outside his fence. And that was the first thing. And he's been, I guess it's 30 foot and we're mowing 20 foot. And the other 10 foot is easement that the Hughes Corporation owns that tends to be forested, wooded. And so Alan's been planting trees in that 10-foot area and has it marked. So I guess the first comment is just an observation, the forest is gone. And it won't be, obviously won't be there in the future. There's no replanting, it's the development. So what we have is a 30-foot easement. And what's going to happen there is they're going to put stockade fencing, the whole length of that run. And when you do that, you kind of have a canyon, right? There's very limited access. Matter of fact, between Archwick and French Oaks, there are only 4 access points. And one of the access points is blocked, meaning the area, the access point from the drainage from the streets. And the cul-de-sac north of his, someone's put a stockade fencing in a wire steel door up, and it's locked. So there's nobody's transferring that point, And then I didn't walk up to Archwick to see what their 2 access points into that corridor. So we're going to have basically stockade fence, very little access. And I don't have a strong feeling that you want to plant trees in that first 10 feet, from the stockade fence in. I think I don't see any big issues. The issue I would see if you stop mowing and allow growth in that 20-foot area, then if you had to do service to the drainage pipeline in there and the caps, it may be really difficult to get a truck back there. Because
So we're talking about here.
Well, it's all the same.
Okay,
I mean, I'm just going through what his comment was,
okay.
request. So if you stop mowing and Alan plants trees, 10, 15 years from now, you're not gonna have access to get into there.
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, I think the trees have been planted. You've already planted some saplings
But
back
it's-
there outside of our easement, outside of our
Right,
issue, and that's,
right. So,
they're okay.
okay, but I thought he expressed an interest to grow that path into the easement. Did you?
Pardon me?
Did you express an interest to grow that planting into the easement? Budget?
No.
No, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah, the 10 feet is all we
Okay.
need.
Okay, so, then I'll leave that. And then the second is talking about the east and west side of the, I call it a park, it's the dry pond. And
I call
I
it
think
a detention base.
detention base, But it's really turned into a park, to be honest with you. It has a track around it. Community makes access to it, and I think the issues on each side is different. So if you take the west side and you look at that,
Just so I can clarify where we're talking, because I'm a very visual person and I know you're reading off of things, but are you speaking about in this area right here?
I have a map here if you'd like to see it break it up. So
let's go down a little further.
Yeah,
So what we're doing is we're speaking right here of this.
yeah, okay.
So I'm speaking of the area that's around the track. The entrance is a half mile. It's all wooded on both sides. I don't think there's, I don't think that's what Alan's talking about. He's talking about the area.
The driveway, there's a
It's
driveway.
a driveway, right, and it's
That's
wooded,
the lift station for the river authority,
right,
there's some sewers that.
right. And so what
Then
we're
it opens
talking
up
about is
into
the area around the
No,
track.
I know. I went to visit the site,
Okay,
so
okay.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So you have the west side. Okay, now the west side favors May Valley. Thank you very much. Okay, and what Alan's proposed is to plant trees along the embankment along West Valley. And, what you have to think about is on the west side, there's almost, there's about 100 homes that access that park, you can call it that, from that embankment. So what they do is people bring their dogs, they walk down that embankment and to access the park. And it's a very common event. So, if you stop mowing and plant, then you have to worry about how those people are gonna walk down that embankment and get to that, that recreation area. That's what's used for now. And so I think there's some thought needs to be given to that. And I encouraged Alan to contact different groups. I gave him the name of the Republican precinct chair for May Valley and other community groups like My Neighbor, some of those apps, and get a consensus of what they want to do. Because if you start planting and letting brush grow up, then they're going to have more difficult time, accessing that area. So I think, and it's very dry. There's no water. So anything you plant is going to have, a lot of stress trying to get going.
Sure.
I mean, it's a lot of stress, but the first thing that's going to go up is weeds and whatever briars. And when
Okay.
people come down.
So
on
really
that-
quick, this is my understanding. This
Okay.
is a detention basin, correct? This is a detention basin.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it's intended to detain rainwater
Stormwater, yeah.
to prevent flooding. I do not think we can impede the use of the detention basin by planting, trees that will grow up to 20, 30, 40 feet high. Nor can we put brush impeding the use. For detention basins, it's an engineer design. A professional engineer signed and sealed it. They said, this is how much capacity this basin has. I am signing off on that. I didn't get the plans. I don't know if the plans are available.
I did send them to you, did you know? Maybe it's too big.
Maybe it's 43,000 emails that I have. I'm sorry, I just didn't get them, but I did go
Well,
out
that
and
was
I
the
looked at
argument,
the site.
that's what the argument that was made, and so we took out, Rhonda, I think you were there.
Yes.
We took out Howard Hughes, we took out, I think Dan Colcourse was there. The resident was there, Wilson McCoy,
Mhm.
our surveyor was there. I think the consensus was there is a level on that west side that is
When we're
potentially
talking west side, please
the
explain
side towards May Valley.
That's
Where all
west
the-
that's west side.
where the homes are.
this side.
That side right there.
Okay.
There is a potential there to plant some plantings along that slope that would not compromise the volume of the pond.
Okay. I would not feel comfortable until an engineer signs a letter, signs something,
Okay.
says, I've looked at these plans, I've looked at the volume, and it's okay. I would not feel comfortable as a board. I don't think we can impede the volume without having that information.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. That's on the west side. On the east side, I don't think there's any room because it butts right up to the Black Oak subdivision. And our backslope drain and their fencing are at the same level. But the west side along May Valley, I think there is the potential. And to Deidre's point, if we would get LJA or Donnie or somebody from our design company to maybe look at that and bless that off, I think we at least get the go ahead for that side all the time.
But I think you have to involve, you know, Alan's made a proposal and it's his proposal. And we have 100 other residents who probably make use of that access point down the hill. And I think you have to get more input to modify that, you know, to sit there and say, we want trees planted there.
Yeah.
Are you
I think
saying because people
argument-
walk down the
They
embankment?
come
Yeah,
down.
the argument is,
That's how you
can we even
access
plant
the.
the trees
Right.
first? We need to determine if that's not,
Right.
if that's off the
I mean,
table.
it could be
then I
other solutions, you know,
think that goes, that first.
you know, more.
I agree
more-
with
Make sure we can get
Mike's
the
attitude.
ability to plant the trees. Then we go out and say,
Right,
okay,
right.
now who's gonna do it, who's gonna pay for it, and who's
That's
against
right.
it, who's for it?
There's no water. But
Yeah.
but people come down that bank, that, you know, they bring the dogs out, they tromp down the hill and they
And there's
access.
pathways where you can see where
There's no pathways right now. It's
where
just,
they walk. There's trails.
So last time we talked, we said, look, if trees are planted, we would, just as for a maintenance issue, we would recommend that you let the inside of the trees and the vegetation grow up. So, because it's very hard to mow in between all those trees with our mowers. And I think that's kind of how we left it until this meeting.
One of Dan's comments when we toured was that anything above the spillover
Yeah.
is comfortable with. And George has made that comment as well, that anything, you know, above that spillway is not really, we really shouldn't be considered the basin because there's no way that the water would.
Right,
rise
if you go out there and look at it, I agree with that. I think Deidre would agree with that, but I think to Deidre's point, we would, I want the person responsible for the design of it to bless that as well.
One comment I'd like to add is that, you know, the township has been really interested in planting trees up on the crest of that ridge. They had a real active effort 3 or 4 years ago where they had hundreds of volunteers come out there and plant trees up there.
when you say crest, what side is that in?
On the west side of the top of
There's
the
trees there
slope.
now.
The township has planted some big trees. All the little trees that the volunteers put in died. So the township has an ongoing interest in that park. And what I'd like to do is, if we approve the concept, is to ask the township if they will oversee, you know, the planting of trees and also long-term maintenance of that area that gets planted. They already maintain the trail, and I think the township is better at selecting trees, maintaining a forest than Mud 46 is. We don't have that expertise. And so you know, if we go through and say, okay, approve it, and maybe we have to have it contingent on a engineering study, but
So who planted these trees?
There is a strip up there that is forest reserve.
Okay,
Township did plant
the
those,
township planted those and the township maintains those.
and the township maintains them.
Water zone maintains them.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so this embankment is where more trees want to be planted?
Correct, down about to 10 feet above the backslope drain elevation. So down
10
about
feet
15
above.
feet on the slope. 15
From the top.
From the top, excuse me.
I think it's, in general, it seemed like a very uncomplicated request, right? Like, I'm going to go plant trees, it's going to be beautiful and lovely. But I've had experiences where us as a mud can't take on the responsibility of maintaining and watering, and especially in the middle of a drought, trees.
and I just want to
Yeah,
recommend
we
that
would
we
do that.
ask the township to do that.
Would we, as the mud, ask the township to
That's
do
what-
that?
That's what my recommendation is to go,
Or
to
would the
see-
homeowners,
well.
and there'd have to be like an agreement between the MUDs and the township at the request of the homeowners, because the township works on behalf of the homeowners of the
Right.
associations, of the village associations, right? Like that's who they work on behalf of.
So Fred, is 386, is that Mill Valley and Sterling Ridge
Yeah.
Village Association.
Yeah.
And so I think it would have to be homeowners collectively make a request to the township. And the township says, can we come to an agreement with the MUDs to do this? We're the owners of the property, right? And then we'd have to have a term of agreement? Is that how we'd have to lay it out?
The way the trail was brought to us was the development company says, we want to put in a trail.
Mhm.
We will install it, create it. And then they got permission from MUD 46 to do that. And there's an agreement between MUD 46 and the township where the township maintains it.
Okay, I would
So I'm sure we
certainly
would do the same thing.
not want to have other properties say, well, how come y'all went to the town? How come MUD 46, you went to the township and you got this agreement with them and you didn't look at my detention basin? So I think my preference would be it coming from that way to the MUD.
There is another detention basin in MUD 46 out at Windvale Park. The township does maintain that. They maintain the crest and actually down into the slope. Mike tells me that MUD 46 maintains the wet bottom of that detention pond. I think
We can't touch much of it though.
I
Yeah,
think
Yeah, well, it's
that
not wet now, it's completely dried up.
Yeah.
I think that
But yeah,
the
we
development company actually owns the land.
we mow that tract, we weed eat that tract. We weed eat
Do
that
we own the
pond.
land? Does the development company, who owns this land?
I'm not real sure.
Who owns
When I look at the MCAD, it looks like the development company owns
Still,
the,
it's owned by the
and MUD 46 actually owns the land that the park is on.
So it sounds like a three-way agreement.
There needs to be cross-functional cooperation to
But I
make
think
this work.
The big part of it is the township. The
That's right.
township, because they're the ones that are gonna,
Well, and-
we're
and
not in the tree business.
Payment, they're not gonna put the trees out there for free. They're gonna want to be paid for
Yeah.
those trees. Someone's gonna have to pay them to put the trees there.
The township does have a budget for planning.
They do.
They do.
We had talked about helping out as well.
Okay.
It's to go that way. So
Okay,
we
good.
went out in the field that day and had the discussion.
Yeah.
I hope I wasn't speaking out of turn, but yeah, we had talked to Alan about trying to see what we could do to help as well.
I've got one question for Alan, actually. Have you taken a reading from your neighbors, the 100+ people that live around that area, to see if they're in support of you?
So I've got about 30 neighbors that have helped with the plantings behind my house. And when I see people on the trails, them out there as well, I ask if they'd be supportive of that. And everyone I've spoken with said yes. I have names. of
Well, that's
people-
anecdotal. What I'm trying to get to is what Deidre's point was. It's a 3-part agreement, which is always messy in any kind of legal situation because everyone does this, right? So I would suggest if you could get a petition signed by a majority of your neighbors, and if we would write a letter to the township that MUD 46 agrees and supports this, and lateral the whole thing over to the Woodlands Township, you've got the HHC support, you've got support of the MUD, you've got support of the neighbors, the majority of the neighbors. Seems to me it's a foregone conclusion.
And on the receiving end, the conversations I've kind of off the record had with the township is they're receptive.
Right. And we already have 2 other agreements that support this action, this direction that we're going. So I say take it off our table and we do the right thing by writing the letter supporting it. Let him do the right thing with his neighbors. So we won't have people coming up and say, wait a second, we never agreed to that. You could say, hey, I've signed a petition. I've got a petition done and it's been signed by a majority of the neighbors. This is the way we're going.
We have to, I think, frame it in such a way of what we're in control of. All we're in control of and MUDs do is drainage,
Right,
stormwater.
right.
So I don't think we could be in support of trees or not in support of trees. We're in support of maintaining our drainage and preventing flooding.
Without going through the wordsmith
Yeah,
here,
so-
yeah, I think your point's correct. We should be responsible solely for what we're responsible for, but we agree in concept to what the residents want in that area.
And we need a professional engineer to sign and seal a letter.
I
saying
agree with that too. Makes sense.
So what do we want to do today? Do we want to say,
Have somebody draft up a letter, send it to the board members and other stakeholders that goes to Alan and his neighbors and also to the Woodlands Township, okay? Saying we support maintaining our area, the Mud 46 area, and the detention pond, and we have no objection to them going forward with planting trees on the crest to the west side, subject to engineer's report that allows us to do it favorably, and getting a majority of the residents to sign a petition saying that they are in support of it.
I guess, seems like that's very complex to me. I think the first thing is for Alan to come with the proposal and get, I mean, you can see by this tone, we could say a sense of the body that, you know, on theory, we don't object to certain planting. But I think there needs to be a plan, and we should approve a plan, not.
If it's away from the
around.
detention pond, we don't have any control over it.
What's that?
If it's away from the detention pond, we don't have any
We
control over it.
control everything that we own.
That's not what we're talking about. We're
Yeah,
talking
we
about
don't.
at the crest and beyond where we own, it's HHC property or development company.
So,
property.
the top of the crest is owned by H.
Well, no, Alan wants, you went down the
He
slope.
goes down the slope.
There's trees up there at the crest and beyond.
A few trees.
Into
So
the
he now
valley.
wants,
Where the trees are now is HHC.
Yeah.
You've probably got another 10 feet down the slope, just HHC,
Oh,
and it turns into.
and Deidre's 100% correct. We really do need to have a engineer to confirm our action that it's appropriate.
That's a
Well, I
long,
mean, we could have
That's a
Donnie, if you want, we could have our engineer, Donnie Reed with LJA, look at the volume of the pond and see if it would be compromised by putting 10 or 15.
I defer to the
trees.
more experienced directors on that.
That, and if we get his blessing, then we do what Fred said, let's get a letter to the township saying, we're okay with planting to this level. We're gonna maintain from this level below as our pond.
And assign responsibilities. Who's responsible for the maintaining of those new trees?
Do something like that.
okay, so do you want to do a motion now to do those three things?
I recommend that.
Okay, would you make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay, so the motion is,
There's a motion.
we're gonna get an engineer, an LJA engineer to evaluate the slope and see if we can do plantings without compromising the volume of the basin.
And the slope, I mean, I want him to make sure that the slope isn't going to become unstable.
Okay,
I don't think we can craft the motion wordsmith wise here, but I think that if we have the salient points, we could send out as part of the next meeting, a draft letter for the motion.
we've got this, we've got your comments recorded, right?
Hope so.
And so we should be able to, I'll draft up something and pass it back and forth to you
Sure.
to words. And we'll
Fine.
cover that at the next meeting.
And again, I'm going to defer to the engineer, experience more to.
I can send an email to you if I send it to Deidre also, then we have a
We have
quorum.
we have a problem. Yeah.
Do not send it to me. I'll read it when everybody reads it at the meeting. You two can work it out and then I can provide comments at the meeting, correct?
Okay,
Send me the letter. I'll send it back to you.
okay, I'll do that.
Good.
Any other comments?
It's premature for me to get signatures at this point, or do you recommend I go ahead and move forward with that? From neighbors.
I would
I would.
begin the process of introducing yourself to you. And we're talking about the neighbors who live in, Springtime Creek, that area, west of the slope, right? Be having French oak neighbors sign it.
I'm not trying to make this too complicated, but I wouldn't include everybody in your neighborhood, only those people that border the area.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna start going outward streetwise to be, beyond the detention pond 2 blocks, because people might walk their dogs down there, I think we're missing the point. You want the people who are immediately impacted by their
And
residences.
that would be Springtrap Creek and Bloom Hill. But there's some cul-de-sacs up there too, but that's the neighborhood that most likely would, leave their house and walk down the hill.
Precisely.
Well, they may object to the view now.
They may object to the view, right?
You don't know.
You don't know,
You don't know.
but Alan will. But I think what you should hear from this is that we are positively positioned to support your direction that you're going, and we want to do it right, but we also have some regulations that constrain us. So that's what we're trying to deal with here.
And we want the plan to be long-lived,
Yes.
where somebody doesn't come in and say, well, we need to chop all those trees down.
And the east side is,
I don't think there's any opportunity over there, just from my observation, but I'll have LJ look at it.
my observation is that whole east side is approached with the new development.
They're right at the. they're
Right,
on it.
the new development's gonna be over there. You don't know whether they're gonna put stockade fencing along that.
The
At
real
length.
obstacle I see is the high voltage power lines overhead. There's a limit to the power company has
Could be.
an area underneath those that they prohibit planting of trees. But there's a small patch to the,
Does that run along the property line?
yeah,
I thought it ran deeper in, but I mean.
No, it's right on the
Right on the
property
property line, yeah.
and there's some little wedges that
Yeah.
on the, I guess that southeast corner that may be plantable.
If they put their road like Springtime Creek did, right along, and there's no houses across the street, they just have the embankment.
Yeah.
And you'd have to find out.
We know where all the underlying easements are there, if any, correct?
We do.
Okay. So we have it platted or,
Yeah, we have it. It's platted on the plat.
okay.
And
I'll just
Spencer
try to
County-
stop by your office sometime and look at them, so you don't have to email them to me.
Okay.
I'll look at the plat and the plans.
The developer put their stakes about 10 feet in from the barbed wire fence. So if someone could confirm
The east side,
on the east side what I thought was their property, but they staked it about 10 feet in. So if your engineer or surveyor could,
into the pond?
no, opposite.
Oh, up into their property. Okay, okay.
But that's outside your fence, right? They put those stakes.
Outside the barbed wire fence, but if that's your property, that would be nice to.
That would be nice. I don't think it is, but that would be nice. That'd give us a little buffer there.
Well, thank you, Rhonda, for helping us with the
Oh,
concept of putting trees in. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Are y'all ready to go on to the next one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Ed, we'd like to go to number 11 and receive the SJRA Woodlands Division report.
Okay. In your packet,
and let me just tell you why I requested this really quick. I just wanted a 5-minute overview of all this because residents don't get the packages. And it is being recorded, so I think that the items that I wanted to pull out would be
I'm prepared.
wonderful. Okay,
In your packet, on page 36 is a summary of the consultant progress meeting that SRA staff has with the consultant in advance of the stakeholder meeting. Starting on page 44 is the stakeholder meeting summary. And that's what I'm going to give you a quick overview of. So the goal of this last stakeholder meeting was two things. One is reduce the number of treatment options from 2 to 3, and then also reduce the number of conveyance options from 3 to 2. And so I'm going to go over the treatment options that were accepted or adopted and the conveyance options that were adopted. First one on the treatment was the baseline option. That is where we're going in and replacing, repairing, rehabilitating facilities as their service life dictates. So in 5 years, if an aeration basin needs to be replaced, we start that process. 5 years later, if the lift station needs to be replaced, we start that process until we have gone all the way through plant 1 or plant 2. This is not considering consolidation under the baseline scenario. Under the second option that's being further analyzed is conventional treatment, new plant immediately adjacent to wastewater plant number 1 on new property acquired during this process. And on page 38 of your packet, there is an image that has an area covered in yellow that identifies the potential land that's being considered or would be considered for the acquisition. This is conventional treatment, typical, very similar to what we're already doing at that plant. Membrane, the other treatment option would be a membrane plant, also on this new property, immediately adjacent to the existing plant. You construct that plant all at one time, take wastewater treatment plant, the old plant out of service. Basically, you're operating one, building another. When this is complete, you mothball the old one. Keeps the contractor out of our business, the day-to-day operations. It keeps our guys out of contractor's business. So those are the 3 options that were considered and adopted by the stakeholder group. On conveyance, the 3 options that were considered and 2 selected were all gravity line from wastewater plant 2 down to wastewater plant 1. And that would be installed in phases with the understanding that it wouldn't be fully connected until the final consolidation of the treatment plant 2 down to 1 occurred. That is on the west side of Lake Woodlands, does not cross under the lake. It follows existing street routing. And if we need easements, we acquire them, but there is no business takings, no home takings. We're basically parallel to or in the public right of ways. The second conveyance option that was considered but not adopted was a gravity force main from treatment plant 2 to treatment plant 1. Oh, let me back up. On the all gravity system, that has the potential to eliminate anywhere from 5 to 7 lift stations. So it cuts down long-term in operation and maintenance costs of lift stations.
A reduces 5 to 7.
Potentially reduces
Okay.
system 5 to 7 lift stations. And 2 of them are pretty good sizes. So on the gravity force main, this is also on the west side. It does not eliminate any lift stations, but it does require 2 lift stations to be expanded because of the additional flows. And then on the final conveyance option that was considered, and this one was included or is being included in the analysis going forward, is a gravity force main from treatment plant 2 to treatment plant 1. Only it comes down the east side of Lake Woodlands, utilizing existing pipes in the Hughes Landing area and along East Shore. There's a 42-inch line that's on our CIP for further rehabilitation if it's necessary. And I've been told that that line was oversized initially because they needed the flatter grade to be able to lay that line. So those, the all gravity line and the gravity force main on the east side of the lake are in the analysis. Now, if you go through the slides and the summary in the meetings, there are some cost estimates identified. Those are order of magnitude type costs. As we go forward to the next stakeholder meeting, the consultant is going to be doing life cycle costs, 50-year life cycle costs. That includes new construction costs, operation maintenance costs, and all that's necessary to have a equivalent evaluation of the options.
And I took some of your slides
Yes.
and I put a little bit of summary text around them.
Mhm.
And those notes, or I call it my notes of your meeting, start on page 54 in the packet.
Okay.
And so
How does my summary compare with your notes?
it's just fine. it's, you know, what I tried to do on page 54, where you had, alternatives that were selected. I
Mhm.
picked off that slide that
Yeah.
shows the ones that the,
The ones that are fully circled,
yes.
yes, 2A, 2C were the two treatment options. And, well, no, excuse me. 2C was selected and 3C was selected along with alternate one, the baseline. And then on page 55, alternate A and alternate C were added to the analysis. So
Yeah.
that's the quick summary of 4-hour meeting.
And on the
Can you
next
go back?
page.
Can you go back and explain that again?
Okay. On George, on your packet, page 54,
Right.
the baseline on treatment options for analysis,
I understand that
Option
one.
one, the
I understand
baseline.
that one, right?
2C only and 3C only.
Okay.
And then on the conveyance options on page 55, alternate A and alternate C.
Two things, treatment and then conveyance.
Correct. Do any of these treatment or conveyance alternatives run any risks due to subsidence or any other factor? Have they been considered that they can adjust or change the way the pipes or the conveyance system is laid out? Because I don't want to see us 20 years from now, I probably won't be on the board then, but 20 years from now having a problem, well, 15 years or 10. For that matter.
I'm not anticipating that subsidence would have that big of an impact to laying an all gravity line. If there would be enough differential elevation between the two
Okay,
where you're going to get flood.
you folks are the engineers, if that's what your analysis shows, then that's fine. Okay, thank you.
We will make certain that they do take that into account. It has not been discussed.
Questions?
Yes,
for
ma'am.
you. So where is the cost of acquisition of the land?
There was an estimate factored in there at 4 point. If you look at page 56,
Yeah,
there's a kind of a yellow line,
so 4.18 million?
Yeah.
Okay,
and that was based on MCAD information, not
which is
based on.
very low, so we should probably put some
We're
factor.
basing on public information available, and when
I
it
guess
gets to a
that's-
point, we'll
yeah.
get an estimate.
But if we're,
It's 70-80% basically.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
at some point we would have to plan because we've got to pay for it, but okay. So what are the downsides of putting it in the public right of way? The gravity lines, the force beams, and if you do put it in the public right of way, are you putting it under the road?
Right now, we're not planning under the road, we're planning outside of the road limits. And so if you put it in the public right of way, just like the GRP line, if something happens and they widen the road and the county says move it, we have to move it. Now, the
And
likelihood of having to move a gravity line that's under a road, if it's constructed like it's supposed to be, there are gravity lines under a lot of roads all over this metropolitan area.
But we have to take that, like that's something that I think we should make sure that
It's on
we're
us.
aware of, the general public's aware of, is that we would have to take on that expense of moving it.
If it's required to be moved.
And so,
And it's at pretty good depth.
Even if it's not under the roof, you still gotta take the.
yeah, you do, you have to pull it out. So how big of a line is this?
Which area?
Well, tell me the diameter ranges.
I believe it starts 42 and ends up about 48 to 60, if I recall.
60 at the lower end, maybe
Okay.
66.
And how much space is there in between the roadway?
That's more detail than we're getting into at this conceptual stage.
I would be very concerned about being able to construct that.
We know that we would have to get construction easements along with permanent easements.
Now,
And
one thing,
that's not being taken into account payment wise in this.
The construction easement,
Yes.
don't know. We have no easement costs in here today, only property costs for plant.
probably worthwhile putting
It's
that
gonna be
in.
part of the life cycle costs that they're looking at.
Okay.
Now, one thing to note is if we go on the east side with alternative C, a good 70 to 75% of that line currently exists. It's already up for rehab, so instead of rehab, we just replace it.
Okay.
So easement's already there, lines already there, maybe just a quick rehab in some sections. You're only talking about the part that's basically between plant 2 and just a little bit past Gosling. And that goes through Greenfield, actually, where you're looking at putting your detention ponds.
Have you taken the fall tour?
I have not.
It's probably worth your while because you'll understand it a lot more than I did.
Okay.
But I was concerned about its proximity to Lake Woodlands and also the statement that we're looking at subsidence, at least in the recent past, of between 1/2 inch to as much as almost an inch per year. So using your numbers on the size of the different pipes that we're constructing, if there's any type of additional subsidence, plus we've gone through the expense and effort to get right of ways onto public area, we're looking at a double whammy that we have to pay for.
In detailed design, you have to get a bunch of environmental studies, you've got to
Right.
get geotechnical reports, and you have to adhere your design to fault crossings and fault locations. So in detailed
We
design,
take
all
that-
of that
Take
should
that into
be,
account.
Okay.
Once we get to the detail of that, we're
yeah.
minimum 5 years
Okay.
from
And-
detail design.
They say it's crossed the fault line.
Sir,
Did they cross a fault line?
potentially,
Potentially.
I think it may be the Jones.
we would just have to look and see and then have the analysis done.
It's just mitigation measures that the engineer will put into the design of the pipeline.
It might help
Yeah.
someone like me who's new, since I don't have the history that both of you have, to at least make notations of those areas or points that are not in the study right now, for the sole purpose of reminding us that they need to be addressed at some point during the life cycle of this program. Does that make sense to y'all?
You know, yeah, and just to kind of expand, what we may want to do is consider having what the scope of phase 2 would look like, since we're getting close to that.
Good
Phase
point.
2 is
Yeah.
the deeper dive into it. when-
Right, I remember that from the presentation you all made.
Trying to bring that up and say, this is the next step if you choose to
Yeah,
go.
but just some summary sheet bullets. I'm not looking for a lot of
Well, that's what it
page.
is, environmental and bio. yeah.
Precisely. Yeah, that'd be great, Chris. Thank you.
Other question?
And it's not because we've talked about this before, I just know these things.
Okay.
Okay, so I think my final questions would be, this is the cost per phase, and I would be looking at alternate, which ones am I looking at?
It's actually, I would say it's easier if you look at the top graph.
This
The,
one?
correct, the bottom graph, what you're looking at is that showing basically every 10 years, the funds that would be needed. The
That's
top,
what I want to look at though.
okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, the top graph is the cumulative portion. So if you're looking at the bottom graph, you're looking at Alt 2C and Alt 3C, which is Alt 2C is a conventional new plant, 3C is the membrane new plant, Alt 1 is the baseline.
Okay, it's-
So there's some kind of interesting comment to add is basically for plant 1 replacement, they're talking about doing that in 2027. And then the replacement of plant 2 would happen in 2047. So those are the major 2 big expense years.
Okay.
The other thing that I found interesting when I went back looking at the slides is the actual cost of the plant, even with the different technologies, is about the same, whether you're replacing, and I'm looking at on the top capital cost slide, the blue item, the blue bar, the actual cost of the plant is very similar. The major difference in cost is the cost of conveyance.
And so these are all in 2022 dollars.
They are correct.
When are we gonna see how much it may cost?
November.
Okay.
So the next stakeholder meeting is going to be life cycle cost, total cost. This is just capital. This doesn't include O&M. This also does not include debt service and interest. So if you do the option one, it's over 50 years, assuming a 25-year bond every 10 years, you're paying for 75 years. If you do alternate 2 or 2C or 3C, you're paying 50 years from it. You don't see that because all you see is just the capital. So in November, next stakeholder meeting, it should be O&M, life cycle costs, interest, the whole 9 wrapped up. Here's some good rough numbers.
Okay,
And debt
because I look at
service,
this
correct.
and
And debt service.
I'm going to expect an increase. These are not so.
Well, and we were reminded by one of the stakeholders that there is continuing changes in interest rate. We asked him if he had a recommendation of an interest rate to use.
Yeah, that was pretty cute.
I'd like to write that down if he did.
He didn't.
You did not.
And he's
I can understand that you can only do what you can do at this point in time.
Correct. Yeah.
But to wrap my brain around it and make sure the public's very aware that these are not the final numbers, that these numbers will have an increase.
Because these don't even have current construction values in.
But if you look at the 5 alternates you have, 12% difference.
Right.
So we're not looking at
It's not
dramatic
That's
change
a huge difference. Correct.
between what those interest are paying.
That is all I have. Questions, why?
Okay.
Thank you.
In your second stakeholders meeting, you will have the forecast out to 50 years showing the future value of dollars with several assumptions of interest rates and costs and the like. And obviously, there'll need to be some type of line item to deal with contingency issues, correct? Is that currently in the thought process right now?
My recollection, there are some contingency values in these now.
Okay.
And, but
Yeah,
because of some of the unknowns that we're dealing with, the unknown of the interest rate, unknown of what construction values might be going forward. You know, you take the fact that there's cement shortage, there's rock shortage, there's concrete shortage. You know, you could expect to see a 40, 50, maybe even a 60% contingency, which is unheard of. But we're trying to develop numbers for costs that we would be incurring in 10 years.
Right, and my concern is one that I've voiced before about the amount of build out the Woodlands Township currently has, the amount of cost for the water treatment and the freshwater conveyance of both ground and surface. And will we at the current levels be able to support this future growth? The answer from my doing my math, I'm not bothering you with my details, but the answer to that was no. And that's why I've been kind of trying to find out what the percent of build out is, because it affects tax rate and growth of taxes over time. So unless we have a major increase in land area of the woodlands, which I don't think is going to happen, we're going to have an increase in both commercial and residential properties over the next, call it 10 years. That will put added burden to the system, which I'm sure is in your current analysis and forecast.
Yes.
But have we overlaid on that the cost structure that Deidre was referring to, the fully burdened cost, against what the tax rate would be current to proposed year by year out 10 years?
We will have some projections because we're going to bring the financial advisors in. And then you remember Jim talking about possibly putting a fee per 1,000 dedicated solely for infrastructure replacement on the water bill. And we're going to have to collectively.
Well, I would only caution to say, I've had lots of comments from people in 46 that have said they don't understand the water bills. They don't understand why one is so much greater or lower than the next one 3 doors down. And I don't get into those answers. My answer is, I'm new, I'm learning, but I'll get back to you. And I can only pull that card for another few months.
Right.
I'm going to need to get back to some of these folks because they voted for me. So I just want to bring these concerns up, and I'd like them to be addressed by y'all, which I'm sure they are, but I'd like a detail so I can in turn provide detail.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just add one clarifying thing real quick. As you're reading the notes, going back to what you're talking about development, the current capacity of the 3 plants is, excuse me, about 15 million gallons a day. The cost estimates and everything you see in here takes it down to what we've sold, 10.2 million gallons a day. So it's a decrease in a loss of 5 million gallons of capacity, just as an FYI. Because
That's important.
it is. We talked at the stakeholder meeting about basically as soon as you build it, you're at capacity. So if you want it bigger than that, the stakeholders need to know, so that way they can say, keep the same capacity, reduce it, enlarge it, whatever you want to do.
What What'd you just say that once you build it, you're at capacity?
That's correct. That's what he just said. That's what I've been looking at too.
What you're using now is about 6 million gallons a day.
Right, but I have sold capacity from Six and Final Accounting for 10.2 million. And that's what we'd build a plant for the capacity I've sold. So when Mud 46 has bought 4 million gallons, I have 4 million gallons reserved for you.
I see, but we don't really expect to be using that much.
According to the planning criteria that was done before and approved, we do. But
You're right.
it should be redone at some point just to
Yeah.
verify.
How old is that?
2009, last approved, well, it was done in 2009 and last approved in 17.
Okay, so just, I remember this. The accounting is an accounting measure of what we're paying for per equivalent single family connection,
Correct.
right? That is not necessarily what my flow is.
It's also
It is an
correct.
average across the woodlands. So wastewater is 217 gallons per day per capita per SFUE. And then water is 439. Maybe not exact years, but a combination of years and his.
Yeah, an average.
Right.
But you were saying that you sold 10.25 million gallons of wastewater capacity.
Correct.
The plant can treat 15 million gallons?
Correct.
Okay, so when you are sizing all of this, are you sizing to 15?
Right now, in this, we're sizing to what we sold at 10.2.
Correct.
Are you using 15?
No,
Are you
we're-
going to use 15?
Depends on the projections going forward, like Fred was talking about.
Right.
I mean, I only have projections till 2027, which shows I'm going to use 10.2.
You have projections provided by,
Six and Final Accounting developer, MUD reviewed, under criteria utilized.
That's the one that was done in 17, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I can go to 27. I can't go to 2077 to 50 years past that.
but your permits are for 15 with the TCQ.
Correct. All three of them are now.
Yeah,
15.
Right.
And
you would have
for the
to,
new design to reduce that to 10.
Well, that's what's designed for
I'm
what
just-
we've sold. Yeah. And I just bring that up because if the directors say 10.2 is it, we do 10.2. But if somebody needs capacity, if MUD 46 says, I need another million gallons, you got to front the full
You
cost
know, there's gonna be redevelopment.
over a 50-year period, I would imagine.
There's gonna be redevelopment. Somebody's gonna need more than they originally was built for.
what is the timeline of, if you consolidate, you're gonna have to get a permit, you're gonna have to change a permit for your outfall. What is the timeline for that?
So that's more of a phase 2 thing.
Okay,
But if we don't change the outfall location, we don't have to do a major permit amendment. We'd keep the same outfall. Kinda like
that
we
is like a hazard, like that discharge is inundated, right? I don't recall, like it's not hazardous or something, but
It's an impaired stream.
yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, but anywhere on that stream is gonna be impaired.
Yeah.
From
I know, but
spring to-
everything is impaired. I just, so in phase 2, you're gonna start having the discussions with the TCQ because that can
Agree.
kill the whole thing, right? Like the TCQ will say,
Well, that's another reason why we're not trying to consolidate all of plant 2,
Right.
okay,
because of
okay.
limitations discharging into Lake Williams.
But there's been
So-
preliminary.
So obviously there's a big time gap between
Yes. by 20
between plant 1 reconstruction and plant 2 shutdown based on a new.
About 20 years.
20 years. So there's opportunities to look
Mhm.
at, we
Another
look at
reason-
the expansion of the plant.
Right.
if
Are you
it needs.
still bound by EPA permitting?
No, that got dismissed a few years ago.
Okay. Likelihood of that coming back?
Depends on the administration.
Yeah,
Okay.
TCQ.
There you go.
So, quick question, sort of a sanity check question. we're at 5:30 and we're gonna run over. Are we gonna hurt Mud 36?
We have to leave. We need to run. Neither one of us were there last month. We were still in this month. So Shelley's not here. Shelley is ill. She went home ill, so
So when you say we need to leave, you're saying you guys.
Brian and I.
Okay.
So what items on your regular do we need to
So
run?
we've got
The only
trustees
question,
report.
just really quick, the only question that I had on the trustee report was, we talked about more odor complaints by treatment plant 1, I guess, on the trustees.
Now, there was just there weren't more complaints. There was a request by Dr. Gibbs to publish the results of some of the information that we've developed, and a copy of that constant contact information is in your package.
That was my only question.
Can I move on? Do you have any questions on the trustee report? Does our trustee have comments?
Yeah,
you'd like to
I've got a
make?
couple things. One, there's a vote to film the trustee meetings. The second,
And there have been comments from other board meetings that the notes summary in there did show that it was unanimous and it wasn't that.
it wasn't.
Right, and those are roll call votes. So in the minutes, the roll call vote would be reflected
I didn't have.
and the 2 no votes. That's just a summary that's put together in
That's fine.
36 hours for y'all. It goes in these packets. It's not.
So we had that, and, then just before I get to the budget, Jim Sensen, Connor, they talked about his retirement next 18 months. And the next thing is that the budget, I guess the River Authority is set at 2.99, 3.4, which means the average water rate for 50% match is $3.2 per 1,000 gallons. And then they have a budget of 19.2 million. Am I correct in that? And so it says 19.2 million.
19.2 million for GRP or Woodlands.
Right.
Either one of them's no. Woodlands is 46 and GRP's.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at the sheet here, so I guess I have. That vote, approve that budget so I can vote.
Yeah, that's item 14.
That's on the regular.
That's in the regular agenda.
Yes, sir.
And, that's about it.
All right, can I move on? Item 14. Do you have comments you want to make on the budget?
Just real forward, the budget has not changed from presented in May, June, and the budget meeting in July. The GRP rate is $3.20, which is the lower rate. All this item is just a vote to give your trustee direction to vote at the August trustees.
And it's based on a 50-50 ratio, and that's 50-50 year round, right?
That is an annual average of 50-50. So obviously some months, like in the winter, you may have more groundwater. In the summer, you may have more surface water or vice versa. But annual average, we hit 50-50.
And that's a total flow average, right?
Right.
Do y'all have more? To instruct our trustee to approve the vote of the budget?
Yes. I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 15, receive update on Fair Branch Dam and, okay.
Danny and I are gonna tag team this one. Look at page 89 in your packet, please. This is the image that shows you the highlighted yellow area is the Bear Branch, Panther Branch, Alden Branch area. And you can see the different colored areas on either side of that. Those are the different muds that participate in the Bear Branch system. Jamie's going to talk to you about the next two slides on the numbers, and then I will talk to you about the projects.
If you'll go to page 90, I have a summary of the detailed budget that you have on page 86 and 87. Starting off with the pro rata contribution by each MUD. For MUD 46, your contribution for fiscal year 23 was budgeted at $113,807. The total contribution for all 5 MUDs is $703,558. How we came to that $703,000 for contribution is that we estimated rolling $101,000 from fiscal year 22 over into fiscal year 23. A minor amount of interest income and $389,000 of expenses, which I'll detail on the next slide. $325,000 of capital improvements, which Ed's going to go into further detail on the 3 projects that make that up. And then establishing a 2-month operating reserve at $90,000.
A question? On 67, isn't that a joint project with all the MUDs? Aren't we funding that all?
Not this particular.
Not this particular part.
Contribution. This is their pro rata share of the operations and maintenance and not that specific project.
Okay, thank you.
The next page, page 91. For expenses, the breakdown is for salaries, wages, and employee benefits. We have $147,000 in the budget. Professional fees at $15,000. Supplies, materials, and utilities at $7,900. Rentals for $3,000. Maintenance, repairs, and parts at $181,000. Just to point out, of that, $113,000 is the mowing contract. G&A allocation at $35,000. The capital improvements, as I said, Ed's going to go into further detail, but those are the soil cement repair and service spillway preliminary engineering for those 2 projects, and the low flow vault repairs for $75,000. And again, establishing that operating reserve at $90,000. Just wanted to point out that we do account for and keep all the funds for the Bear Branch in separate accounts. They have their own bank accounts and everything is accounted for separately. We do, all the funds that come into that account are used for the sole purpose of maintenance and repairs and operations for the Bear Branch Reservoir and dam. And these unspent funds, as you saw on the previous slide where we had 101,000 that was we were anticipating the unspent in fiscal year 22 does roll into the next fiscal year. So that's an ongoing. And then I'll hand it, unless you have questions, I'll hand it back over to Ed to explain the projects.
So if you'll go to page 92, we have 3 images there on the right. This is, you're looking down, you're sitting on the reservoir looking downstream. And if you look where that red circle is, that's where the low flow vault is located on the dam. The next image in the middle is an aerial view of the service spillway. And then the image on the left is a poor quality of the soil cement. Hopefully on the Google Drive, those photos are better. So if you'll go to page 93. You've heard me talk about Congressman Crenshaw looking for drainage projects to try and get some federal dollars for. Bear Branch Dam, we offered that project up. We told him what the total price was at 5.2. He's trying to get 3.6 million allocated for to help with the local share. We think that legislation will be approved before the end of September of this year. And hopefully the funds will be available summer next year. But the timing of that is okay because the big project that MUD 67 is pursuing, we're out for RFQs right now. We think that we'll have modeling results by summer of next year so that those modeling results can be incorporated into the preliminary engineering for the Bear Branch Dam rehabilitation. But we've built into the budget $125,000 for preliminary engineering on the soil cement rehabilitation and $125,000 for the service spillway replacement. And the timing of that, we wouldn't pursue a consultant until end of FY 23, early 24. And if you recall some of the conversation, there was an interest by, I'll say, a majority of the MUDs to try and accelerate the engineering because there's concern about the dam. So we're planning for late FY 23, early FY 24 to start preliminary engineering. You go to page 95, the image on the right is the image from the original low flow vault hatch cover. Just a sheet of metal with two handles on it and an exposed latch. We've had issues in the past about vandalism and damage to that lock. So in 2014, that hatch was replaced with the diagram that's on the left. It's a raised hatch, still has an exposed latch on it. Still having problems with people damaging the hatch lid or lock. And so we're proposing to go in with a different type of lid, more of a lockable lift station lid that has a set and keyed lock. And then the other part of it is this vault is 14 foot deep. You open the hatch, there's no fall protection. Somebody could fall in and not get out because there's not a ladder inside. So we're also talking about putting fall protection netting on the inside to keep somebody from hurting themselves, even though they're not supposed to be there to begin with. So that's what the $75,000 is for. If you recall, and I'll take it one step further. If you recall the resident that came and talked to you all about wanting some participation for security. We know we've had vandalism out there and trespassers. What we wanted to do was take this FY 23 and monitor that more closely, get a better feel for what kind of vandalism, how frequent. We know we're repairing fences, and then come back in next budget year and talk to y'all. If there's a need, talk to y'all about added security and other things that might be needed to monitor our facility only. But right now, there's nothing in the budget for that.
And you'll give us that in a report, correct? Like over the months and
As
2023, just like
Yes.
this month, we had 5 incidents or whatever. I don't.
correct.
What is this low flow vault? What is the purpose of that?
There is this allows us to drain the lake, lower the lake level down on an as-needed basis to do repairs, maintenance along the water's edge. All dams have it. In the case of Lake Conroe, it's a much bigger pipe. It's more like 10-foot diameter. This one might be a 10 or 12-inch pipe. It's got a gate valve on it with a handle that goes up towards the top, and you open it as necessary to lower the lake elevation.
But it drain the lake or just lower it?
It could drain it if left open long enough.
No.
Yes, sir. That's it on Bear Branch Dam. No action is necessary. It will be in the budget considerations. Oh, one last thing on page 96. These are some of the other maintenance items that we do on a routine basis on Bear Branch reservoirs in the system, along with the mowing that Jamie mentioned. Any questions?
I asked about administratively how things work. So there's like 6 contributors to this. 5 contributors to the project.
Yes, sir.
Is there any committee meeting for those 6, or you just include this in each month's packet?
It's in each packet, and
Okay.
we've had this past year, we've had a couple of opportunities when each board president of the contributing MUDs got together to talk about Bear Branch Dam. Beyond that, I'm not aware of anything where there's been conversation. Now, if that's something, there's an interest of that going forward, I would think that we could do that semi-annually, quarterly, or whatever.
But you wouldn't necessarily say MUD 1. You wouldn't include this in there. Right?
No,
Okay.
no, it's only for the
Oh,
electrical
okay.
districts. Yes.
Now, there is one thing, and Brian has alluded to it in the past. Mud 39 is annexing some property that will drain into Bear Branch. So it's possible that Mud 39 could be added next budget year to this mix. It's not a whole lot of property, so their SFDUE count would not be significant, so you wouldn't see a large reduction in your contribution. It'd probably be a blip on the grand scale of things, but you know, and then Metro Mud also has a small piece down at the lower end, south of Goslin Road. So the question would be, should they be added? You know, they're part of the big drainage project, but do they need to be part of the maintenance project?
We talked to Magnolia.
What's that?
We talked to Magnolia yet?
Yeah. Other questions? All right. Thank you all very much.
Number 16. David, this one was, I think, one you initiated,
Yes.
and there was a conversation at the budget review meeting at the SJRA. Do you still want more detail on this?
So this is this, I got a list of all the obligations. I don't know whether the rest.
I'm not on
I got a copy of
obligation.
it, Joe.
Yes.
I'm on 16.
16.
This one is discussion regarding components of the surface water and groundwater pumpage fee.
He was talking debt structure.
I'm talking debt structure. I would still,
Do you want to cover that today? It's really where
no, but I'll just say my comment. I'd still like to see when you could, like the sewage and the 10-year plan for debt. I mean, you guys have I would call it a depreciation amortization element, like
Right.
how much you're
For the debt service.
to the
yeah.
debt service. And then obviously if we, let's say 6 million and we maintain 6 million, it's not going to change your rates.
Right.
But if we go to 18 million, it's going to change your rate. So I'd like to see when you start giving like these suspensions for the sewage plant and the 10-year plan,
Right.
what your expectations of, you know, how many pennies does this add, you know, above the previous year?
Agreed. That's what we're starting to talk about. We're gonna look at it over the next 6 months before January and provide all that to
I mean,
you.
you have to do those calculations, but I'd like to see
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
future.
I've got a question for you, Dave. Do you think it'd be helpful to have that memo that Tom sent to you with all the debt information distributed to the board in total?
I don't have, no, only I got this memo, did you?
I got it too, because I was asked to
Okay, so
make sure all of your questions.
To provide a list of
So
all.
let me ask you a
Go
question.
ahead.
Number 16, are we gonna cover that or skip it? Is it done?
Calculation is in the packet.
That's a change from
That's a
previous
change,
years.
yeah.
It was discussed.
I'm okay with that for now.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you want
okay
to go
with
on to
16.
17. Previous commitments.
So we have a list of previous commitments.
That's what you've got.
That's what I have.
Yes.
And I guess
Everybody else received it.
the rest of you didn't receive it?
No.
I got it from Tom and I think you guys should,
It should
You
be
should-
on the Google Drive, because we uploaded all of the summary as well as all the contracts.
good, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, they're all uploaded,
Okay,
there should
so
be-
it's on the Google
That's
Drive.
building a drive, so
Good,
those are
okay.
all of our obligations. And I was gonna
And
ask for
I
the,
just,
I,
I picked up the stuff that I
I
thought was
understand.
the high level,
Right.
because we talked about.
That specific document, is that on there? This specific document you've been
Documents
on
that
it?
are referenced in here are on the Google Drive.
on the Google Drive.
But what I don't see here is the dollars.
So that's on the Google Drive. I thought it was a little
Okay.
bit more than what y'all had asked for to go through and try to do a summary of each item. I give you the actual document.
What's it under on the Google Drive?
That's a Shelley question.
Okay.
Are they all Bear Branch related?
No,
No, because David had asked for
So.
bonding
cancel that
authorization.
page.
And so we've got the order of canvas and the elections that give you the bond authorization. Some of them, are fairly old. But, and also to have, so to the 1989 and 2001, so you've got some older bond authorization. The most recent offering document, that has all the kind of most recent historical information about the district, development about in the district. So that's in there, the most recent audit, and then the River Authority agreement, the various supplements. the Woodlands Water Agency agreement and the various amendments to that over time. The Bear Branch contract that we've been talking about with the addition and supplement to that, and the interlocal agreement for the construction of the improvements that we had approved by Texas Water Development Board.
So
Can
like,
I make a motion then that document that you sent to Tom and he sent to David and me?
No, I didn't send it to any particular director. All I did was send it to this and the summary and the actual documents. I probably will send them to Shelley.
Shelley, and it's on the Google Drive. Okay, great, great.
what I thought David was asking for was examples like the wood forest.
That's on
agreement.
here. So that's item number 31.
Okay. They're not numbered.
We don't have, our sheet isn't numbered.
Okay.
Okay, so
So I guess the way I looked at this, you gave us a list and had a lot of casual reading. And so we can go on to Google Drive and we can begin
That's what I thought kind of
We-
goal
we-
was to start to.
our education.
I'm happy to answer questions either at a board meeting or individually that y'all might have.
okay. We're at whatever, 9 minutes to go. Are there any items that we really need to cover? And I'm thinking we do them and others will carry forward.
The only
Under
thing that we should
19,
probably do is drought contingency.
Yeah, I was fixing to hit quickly on 19, not a whole lot to cover. I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that these policies are out there. And that when we get into severe drought conditions, that they have to be implemented. The Woodlands, because we're unique in that we have the defined irrigation schedule that has the odd even watering that most communities don't. Because we have that, we can actually, there's 4, as you saw in the handouts or the Google Drive, there's 4 different stages. Through stage 1 is voluntary, stage 2 starts mandatory, and then you ratchet up the restrictions and notifications, et cetera, as you move up through the stages. The first stage of mandatory actually is covered by our odd even watering schedule. So we actually don't have to ask our customers to do any more than what we're already doing on a daily basis through stage 2. If we go up to stage 3, that changes. You're down to 1 day a week watering, whether you are using an automated system or a hose-ended sprinkler or handheld sprinkling. The good news is, even though you're probably hearing about other areas of the metro area that are having to implement their drought contingency plan, we've done a very good job of educating our public, and water usage is better here than it has been probably ever on a per person basis. Chris has the data as far as where we are and what we would have to hit to go into our drought contingency. I think you said we're at 30 million or so.
Yeah, we're about
today.
30.
And it takes about 45 to actually trigger. So we're actually a long ways from having a trigger, which doesn't seem to compute because of how dry everything is. But wanted y'all to be aware of it at a minimum, in case you're hearing about DCPs being implemented elsewhere, that you know that we do have one, but we're not having to implement it yet. It does have to be updated by law every 5 years. So the last 5-year update was 2019.
So the governor declared 200 plus counties as
And
disaster.
not Montgomery.
Not Montgomery, but Harris.
Yes, yes, I thought that was
Does
interesting.
that give, we lose out on some benefits there or?
I mean, as far as this goes, no. I mean, some entities, because of a disaster declaration for drought, that will be a trigger of their DCP. Now we've got other integrated triggers with the river authority because we get surface water and groundwater from them. But that doesn't have an impact on us at this point with our DCP.
I just want to commend staff on the AMI interface. That is one of the
Like it?
easiest interfaces that I have to go on to several other smart meter thing, and it's very cumbersome. And this one, I get a text. On all my others, I get an email. I don't have an option for text. And so I just really appreciate it. And I know for me, that has lowered my water usage because I'll get a text saying you've used this many gallons, which is above your daily usage. And then I say, okay, well, sorry, trees, I can't water you as much today. So I appreciate that in conjunction with the Twitter feed about how much I should water that week based on upcoming rainfall.
So I'm gonna keep going for just.
Spread the word.
2 questions. We have receive update on SJRA Spring Creek detention, and I'm picturing we should carry that till next meeting.
Nothing.
Nothing there. How about attorney's report?
Nothing of a general nature, no need to go into closed session, so we're actually right on time.
Okay, question is, are there agenda items we want to carry into next meeting?
We'll have the draft budget for the MUD, that's standard for August, as well as your recommendation from your financial advisor on your tax rate, that's also standard for August.
Mike, you were, I think Jim was talking about potentially swapping meeting time with MUD 36.
We're not.
They don't want to swap. So can we
It
have,
does have something you'd like to add at the end, just for the next 2 months of meetings.
Right, the appraisal district based on, protest and employee issues. They're not gonna be certified by the 25th like they normally are. They're looking at August the 5th, so they're gonna send us over preliminaries because by law they have to. Right now, they have to be 95% certified countywide. They're at 87 as of yesterday. So I need a quorum here August, and I need a quorum in September. You're gonna do your proposed tax rates. I have to publish, it's a 2-step process. You do your operating budget, your proposed operating budget, but I have to publish the tax rate you want me to, and there's timelines. And your September meeting is your public hearing meeting. So that's when you adopt your rate. So it would be nice to have a quorum those 2 months.
August 17th and September 21st are your next 2 meetings.
Yeah, I have had to move some things around to make this meeting. I don't believe I'm gonna be able to make next, but I definitely will be here for September. Can I zoom in? Okay,
But September is when you actually adopt the rates, so you'll know, you'll go through that process, you know, that, as long as 3 people are here in August, 3 people are here in September.
okay.
y'all be willing to have an agenda item next time to talk about, should we keep this meeting time or try to find another one that we can go?
I'd like to suggest to do that because 3 of us being new,
Right.
we need as much help as we can get.
Good.
I look to you two as the
Well,
senior.
I think
directors.
we are always squeezed like today.
Yes.
I would like to find another meeting time where we can go a little longer.
And
I like efficient meetings, but I hate to be squeezed out.
I agree.
In reality, Tuesday and Wednesday are all taken.
Wednesday morning is open, because the meetings don't start till noon, so. if y'all
And
can
there's
do
no
a morning
reason,
meeting
I don't
on
think
Wednesday.
that we have to have it this week. We could
I have a
go,
job.
well, it could be a different, it doesn't have to be squeezed into this week, right? We
And
could
I
go.
have
It's more
like,
convenient for all the staff.
Yeah. So my thought is, let's just put it on the agenda and we'll talk about it.
Great. Let's do that. I'll make that motion if somebody seconds it.
Do one of you two want to come up with a proposed time?
George, I'll give you a call.
Well, I'm
And make sure-
concerned about, find a time Deidre can come.
yeah, so Wednesdays just aren't great. And Wednesdays,
Oh,
for
well,
me, I have, I have standard.
And you would like after hours, right?
No, not necessarily. This time is fine for me because it's towards the end of my
But it's
day.
not sufficient time is what George is saying.
Yeah, so I,
but 8 in the morning would not be.
No.
Yeah, that's what I think the question.
How about 7:30? I'm not talking in the morning. I'm talking tonight, evening. 7:30 or 9 or 10.
I don't think that,
How about we talk
Talk
about
about
it
it.
next time?
yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm retired, I'm flexible. So most likely you'll hear me, I'll be there.
Not retired. If you get tired
Do
again,
I hear a
I'll
motion to
make the motion.
adjourn?
and a minute to spare.